personal good friend with HotMEOWTH. He's actually one of my main practice partners. We practice a lot. Although our lineups may not reflect that because he brought some really crazy whack off the wall stuff that you typically don't see. Especially he was telling me earlier I brought J Druid and I thought he had two until he submitted the deck list, and then since Montreal. I believe he made top 4.
He did.
On top of DreamHack Denver. I believe he was top 8 as well. Both games we prepped for. And we're going into the first game here. It's going to be HotMEOWTH on that Big Mage versus Eselore on the Tempo Rogue. And this is, I would typically say, very favored for the Big Mage, just for the reason that it has so much AoE, so much spot removal, so much defensive cards that the Rogue just has kind of a hard time getting through all of that defense that the Mage can put up. And I remember HotMEOWTH's been playing this deck for a while. I think his specific list is not actually playing ice blocks. It is actually playing just big spells. I think the lowest he can go on his Dragon's Fury Potion is Polymorph. And, that's something, he's been playing this deck for a while. I remember seeing him playing this deck on ladder at Seed Story Cup. He was a firm believer in this deck. And it's actually crazy to see how other players have adopted it, and that it's actually being brought to Worlds in some capacity, which is just incredible to see.
They're starting to come around to the HotMEOWTH vein of thought here, but Eselore up against Moogie Baby in his series previously today did beat this kind of mage 3 games in a row to reverse sweep Moogie. He did it with the Rogue, the Druid, and then the Priest. So Eselore has seen this deck already, and Moogie's list was a little bit different than HotMEOWTH's in that it did have copies of Arcane Intellect and 3 secrets, so there were whiff opportunities for the Dragon's Fury, and Eselore really took advantage of that with his aggressive strategy. So he's going to want to hit the board very, very quickly and try to get ahead of those AoE removal options because HotMEOWTH has so many of them, but they are very expensive to use.
And they're also kind of particular, right? One thing is, with his AoE, you can kind of expect it to be in the range of Blizzard, Meteor, Flame Strike, Firelands Portal. So for Meteor, you can work on your positioning, making sure that you position your minions in a way that makes Meteor an awkward card. For Blizzard, you kind of maybe hold on to a Vile Spine for the Blizzard Doomsayer combination that would typically clear your board. And then Flame Strike, he knows, is a one-of in HotMEOWTH's list, so that may be something he not necessarily plays around as much, especially if it's coming to turn 7 and Eselore is not like a great lead at that point. Well, it's going to be kind of hard for him to actually, kind of win this game anyways, so kind of just got to put it all in on the table.
As soon as Eselore falls behind, as soon as HotMEOWTH has access to full mana every turn, can make good use of all of his cards, and the pressure is alleviated from Eselore's side of the board, it's very difficult to come back.
Yeah, and it appears that Eselore wants to go wide here for the reason that he says this is Dragon's Fury turn on top of he's seen the Polymorph come out from his opponent, so maybe he didn't want his Portal Creeper to be Polymorph. Maybe he wanted to get it down with another combination of turns to make it kind of more resilient to an AoE board. And he said, you know what, this board actually isn't really that threatening, but a Captain draw, maybe something else can just make it really threatening. And Ice Block it's interesting off the Swashbuckler, but I wouldn't say it's the greatest card to get. You're looking for some kind of burn spell, maybe even a counter spell.
Any damage from hand.
One issue that this mage deck has is actually Secret Mage, for the reason that counter spell is such a detriment to this deck. All of the spells in this mage deck are 6, 7, 5, 4
Very
mana.
Expensive. Nothing to test for counterspell with.
They have nothing to test for counterspell with. They just have to commit and hope it's not counterspell. And I mean, that would have been greater, but I guess I'll take the Ice Block for now. I would have rather had another card, but at least it wasn't. At least it wasn't a
Glacial Mysteries.
At least it wasn't a Glacial Mysteries or a Shatter.
Oh yeah.
Or insert card like Shatter here.
Insert worse card than Shatter.
Insert worser card than Shatter. And this is going to be a great tempo swing for HotMEOWTH. This is kind of what he's looking for. This might just seal the game here, especially with such an awkward hand from Eselore. He really needs something to enable this Vile Spine. He does pick that up, but I'm not sure if that's enough right now.
Yeah, HotMEOWTH has made it safely to the later stages of the game. Now he has Alexstrasza, which he can use defensively if Eselore does find a damage push. And because HotMEOWTH will have access to pretty much every card that he draws now because he is going into 8 mana turns and Eselore doesn't have a significant presence on the board, HotMEOWTH should be pretty safe from here.
Yeah, he's really safe. And even with this Alexstrasza, he might not use it necessarily for a defensive play, but he might just say, hey, you know what, the best defensive play is ending this game as quick as possible and using it for an offensive play, just to kind of end that game as quick as possible. Because, you know, the best defense is a great offense. You know, they can't kill you if they're already dead.
That's true. That is true. If you're not dying in the process, then I would agree with that. And this Arcane Artificer into Meteor, I think, is just going to seal the deal pretty much. We're going into Dragon Caller Alana on next turn for HotMEOWTH, even if he wants it. I think that's going to spawn 2 or 3 5/5s at this point.
I believe at least 3. There was Firelance Portal, there was Meteor. Maybe just 2. I think just 2, actually. I'm trying to think if there was another one. That's, I mean, you know, it's Dr. 9. Instead of Boombots, someone's 5/5 dragons.
But they don't explode.
I mean, they explode. They explode their opponent's face.
That's true.
So
and you know what
they
say?
pseudo-explode.
You know what they say, Dr. J, the best defense is a good offense.
Exactly.
Because you can't die if your opponent's already dead.
Cora, I like the way you've been thinking.
I'm going to cross-stitch it on a pillow. I'm inspired. I wonder where it came from. Yeah, it was just the 2. It was the Firelance Portal and the Meteor. So, HotMEOWTH, with the offensive Alexstrasza, because there's an Ice Block active.
Well, it's also just the fact that Alexstrasza would only deal 1 damage, so it's better to get a wider board state against the rogue, because I think that's the only way HotMEOWTH really loses right now, is maybe if Eselore goes extremely wide, because if we're looking at HotMEOWTH's hand right now, there's nothing to deal with a wide board state. So if he just has his own board state to contest that...
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, it's just writing on the walls, right?
Yeah. Not enough damage available this turn to pop the block, but it's all pretty much semantics from here on out. HotMEOWTH looking like he's going to wrap up game number 1 pretty quickly, and that's actually kind of detrimental for Eselore. In his last set up against Moogie Baby, he was really able to take advantage of this mage deck. He won 3 games in a row with the Rogue, the Druid, and the Priest up against this variant of mage to get the reverse sweep. So now that he doesn't have this mage to prey against, maybe he's going to have a pretty tough time.
Well, it's actually kind of crazy, because it's crazy to think that Eselore had reverse swept the mage in the previous series, because if there was any deck, I believe, in Moogie Baby's lineup that was like almost guaranteed to win, it was that mage. I think just some unfortunate things happened in the previous series, but this mage deck just preys on Rogue, it preys on Aggro Druid, preys on Zulok. It just so many decks that it just is so good against right now. And you needed that Ice Block.
We don't speak of the Warrior class anymore.
Oh, I love the Warrior class. Pirate Warrior is my favorite deck.
Control Warrior is my favorite deck. Fight me.
I'd win. Hopefully.
Sometimes. Let's bring back Justicar Trueheart and see what happens. All right, Eselore is going to be bringing out his Zoo Warlock, one of the only ones that we've actually seen in the tournament. And HotMEOWTH has got his Raza Priest with Anduin in hand already. But for HotMEOWTH, he is desperately going to be needing to find removal. Dragonfire Potion, Psychic Scream, Shadow Word Pain, Shadow Word Death. Those are going to be the big targets for him, because he's going to need to slow down this assault from Eselore.
You know, this is actually a very interesting matchup. I've seen stats that show that Zulok is one of the best ladder performing decks. And I think mostly the reason for that is the fact that when you queue up a ladder game with Zulok, your opponent has to guess whether it is an aggressive deck or it is a control deck. And Control Warlock is so strong that they probably typically mulligan for Control Warlock. So what'll happen is with this mulligan, they'll look for select cards, and then when they find out, oh, by the way, just kidding, I'm actually an aggressive Zoo, they don't have those AoEs that they typically wouldn't keep against the Control Lock, and they just kind of get blown out of the water. However, now that we're in the open deckless phase, that kind of gets shelled out. Edwin knows what he wants to mulligan for, and that makes this matchup so much better for the Priest, where typically maybe the Priest would have mulliganed wrong in order to give the Zoo just a free win. And one thing also that made the Zoo kind of, let's say, resilient and good on ladder was the fact that Zoo is running one of the only 3-drops that does not die to Hellfire. And that's Darkshire Councilman.
That's a really good point. Yeah, the Darkshire Councilmans. They were playing Fledglings in favor of the Councilmans for a while, but that has rotated out, and the Councilmans have come back in favor.
And that might partly be the reason why is because, you know, the appearance of Control Warlock.
Yeah.
Fledgling is just a much easier card for Control Warlock to kind of manage than, let's say, Councilman.
So though the Control Warlock is much more common in Conquest lineups right now, and we're seeing a lot of it being brought to the World Championships, and probably a lot of it will be banned, the Zoo Warlock is still a really formidable deck and a really solid ladder choice. And up against a Priest that can't find the necessary AoE, Zoo Warlock is a killer.
No, it definitely is. And, you know, there's actually interesting. I think there is one player at Worlds bringing a Zoolock, but it's not like a typical Zoolock. It's actually really interesting. It runs 2-drops. I believe it runs Galactic Crawler and the new card, the 2-mana 2/4 that deals damage to your face.
The Vulgar Homunculus.
Vulgar Homunculus. Yes, it plays that card. It also plays Blood Fury Potions.
So no Kaliseths.
And it doesn't play Kaliseth.
Okay, interesting.
I believe that is the.
Maybe I can get the edge over some other tempo decks.
I think that was kind of the goal. Especially with the Galactic Crawlers, don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it plays Galactic Crawlers, and with that, you know, trying to target the Rogue, maybe even like slightly the aggro Druids.
Yeah, we're seeing
trying to get more favorable matchups with that, because, you know, sometimes just dealing with a 2/4 taunt is really hard. It's just an overstatted minion, and, you know, you don't really mind the 2 damage to your face.
Well, Eselore is just going to continue pressuring HotMEOWTH, and without
away.
a Dragonfire Potion here, for instance, there's nothing that HotMEOWTH can do. No, we're still 1 turn away from that Psychic Scream.
You know, I'm curious if there was any merit to clearing off the Priest of the Feast, what it would be weak to. It'd be weak to something like, let's say, a Spirit Lash. Maybe if they can, if he could value trade Pain and then trade the... Well, he wouldn't be able to value trade because the Priest of the Feast would no longer be on the board. It's kind of interesting to see what would have been the reason to leave the Priest of the Feast up, but I kind of like it. I kind of like just going face. It kind of forces them to have, like, a heavy spell hand, and you've seen that HotMEOWTH has been struggling to play cards in the previous turns, and he had to tempo out the Priest of the Feast and just kind of play Binding Heal on top of it, just to kind of gain back health and stabilize.
And HotMEOWTH has done a nice job of cleaning up some of the smaller minions on the board, but Eselore here, he's got 11 on board with the Malchezaar's Imp. That's suddenly 13 with the Doomguard. That's suddenly 20. And Eselore is going to tie up this series 1-1. Just not the necessary removal for HotMEOWTH in the early game. Didn't hit that Dragonfire Potion going into turn 6. And, well, when that's the case, you're dead very quickly.
Yeah, you know, sometimes Zoolock just has those crazy curves where, you know, they have the Coin Councilman into the Councilman into the...
Control Warlock has just absolutely taken over as the dominant Warlock archetype. Eselore going to be coming back with his Rogue this time around, and HotMEOWTH on the Priest yet again.
Did he keep Leroy?
Is someone injured?
I don't think so.
I want to say I don't think so either, but it looked like it was in the mulligan, and that'd be very interesting.
That'd be surprising.
Keep. I don't think it was. I think that was just, like, from our point of view, it looked like it. But, yeah, definitely want to keep that Prince, though. That's looking like a pretty good card right here.
Yeah, I actually ended up with a pretty solid curve with the Prince Kaliseth. Suddenly your Elven Minstrels become that much more valuable. Your Sarnite Chain Gangs are incredibly strong. And, importantly, it starts to mess with the AoE damage from HotMEOWTH's deck. Suddenly Dragonfire Potion doesn't kill Bone Mare, for instance.
I also really like this restraint from Eselore, not developing any minions that turn. Going to make sure he can dagger on this turn, clear up this Northshire Cleric, and then, you know what, maybe develop the Prince later. He also saves the coin, doesn't play 1-drop. That was really good from Eselore, recognizing, you know what, this hand can probably get there if I just don't allow HotMEOWTH to draw. And just denying HotMEOWTH that draw was just a really good play coming out from Eselore.
Restrict the amount of resources from the Priest, because the Priest, with very few cards, has very little to do. The cards are not strong by themselves. They're strong when they're used in combination with each other. They need a full hand to consistently be working towards that game plan. And if they don't find the combo, ultimately, they just don't have the gas to even kill the Rogue.
You know, even saving this coin for something like Vilespine, let's say Edwin has to tempo out a Priest of the Feast or an Arcanine. This coin Vilespine, there's not too many great targets that Vilespine can hit. They're mostly just Raza, Priest of the Feast, maybe if there's something off a Kazakus Potion, or there's Prophet Velen, but typically it's later on in the game.
There's just not high-statted minions in this Priest deck.
It's going to be interesting to decide. I wouldn't mind seeing maybe the Cold Blood develop this turn.
Okay.
For the reason that you didn't see any kind of removal coming out from HotMEOWTH's side. I don't believe HotMEOWTH runs the Pint-Sized Horror or anything like that. The Cold Blood getting developed this turn would mean that it would be in one more turn before Dragonfire Potion.
This guy's tough.
But it's also nice to just kind of see a board state get developed.
Anything
What I
that
like
you
to
can
do
put
with
down.
Cold Blood is I like to get it down on a turn where I think it would maximize its damage.
Okay.
For the reason that if you can make Cold Blood deal its initial 4, because it'll almost always deal 4, but if you can make it deal an initial 4, that just gives you so
1
much
mana, 8
more
damage.
Exactly. Would you play a card that read 1 mana, 8 damage?
Yeah, I would.
Would you? What deck would you play it in?
Every deck.
Every deck.
Oh, yeah. 1 mana, deal 8 damage? Yes.
Sounds like a good card.
Even if it was just deal 8 damage to your opponent's
What if it
face.
was deal 8 damage to your own face? Would you play
Deal
that card?
8 damage to your opponent and 8 damage to yourself?
No, just dealt 8 damage to your face.
What goes on in your head?
I mean, you said you'd play any card that dealt 8 damage. I'm just giving you a scenario. And good thing for HotMEOWTH here, he does have the silence for that. But look, the Cold Blood is actually stuck onto a minion that HotMEOWTH does not want to silence. So unless HotMEOWTH finds an answer, and he kind of has a pseudo answer with this Inner Fire. There's a great pickup from the Lyra just to kind of mitigate some of this damage coming out. And without that, this could be a different. And even the Psychic Scream
That's
off
a
Lyra.
huge pickup.
That is a huge pickup.
Psychic Scream on curve into Shadow Reaper Anduin is exactly what HotMEOWTH needs to be able to stabilize against the assault from Eselore. And now Eselore is going to be the one desperately needing to find resources. He needs to find Elven Minstrel. He needs to find additional strong minions, Bone Mare going into the next couple of turns.
And this
Actually-
is getting really scary.
Is HotMEOWTH just...
No, he
No.
needs 1 more damage.
So Leroy's not Callous.
But if he has to Psychic
close.
Scream next turn,
Then he...
it's game over.
Yeah. Then he has to Psychic Scream.
I'm
Well,
trying to see. He could top that
He could pick
Dragonfire
up
Potion
Dragonfire and play the Burning
and use
Heat-
Binding
the
Heal,
Binding
but
Heal.
he has to do this, and then this is just going to be game.
Man, yeah, set up exact lethal here. Eselore with the Leroy coming down on board, and the dagger swing. That's going to be it. Eselore going to take this to a 2-1 lead over HotMEOWTH.
And that was really strong play coming up from Eselore, just managing his cards in the way that he needed to, and making sure little things like that Cold Blood dealing that extra 4 on that. Well, it didn't deal the extra 4, but the Cold Blood
It dealt
almost
the
threatening.
initials, and to be fair, these amateur players have been really very impressive. They certainly, we didn't know what to expect, what kind of decks they would be bringing, if they would have constructed decks whatsoever, the experience levels. So the fact that we're getting players like Eselore who are consistently impressing us is really phenomenal. I mean, this could be the start of maybe a competitive Hearthstone career for Eselore. This could spark something.
You never know, and that's something great to see. Is just players with talent coming into the scene for the first time. It's just great to see and very impressive to see. And I think it's going to come down to whether this Aggro Druid can get a win, for the reason that I think Aggro Druid is favored in this matchup. It's hard to say. I believe it would say it's favored in this matchup unless HotMEOWTH can find the Spreading Plague, which he does have. But it's definitely going to be a close one because I have not played this matchup in a while.
It's possible that Eselore can find a way through the first Spreading Plague if he does find Mark of the Lotus, Power of the Wilds, and is able to build up a wider board of more mid-range minions. We did see in our first match of the day, it was an Aggro Druid versus a Jade Druid. The Jade Druid, with just one swipe, was able to clear off like 6 minions on the board. If there had been a Power of the Wild, that wouldn't have happened. So Eselore is going to need to go wide, but he's also going to need to build tall at the same time. It's kind of tough to do when you're very limited on resources because the Aggro Druid has very few sources of draw.
So that was an interesting turn coming out from HotMEOWTH. He decided that he did not want to fit in the 1 hero power and play Wild Growth, that he valued the 1/1 and the Jade. Well, I was about to say the Jade count, but this is not a Jade Druid.
Yeah.
So he valued the 1/1 being on the board rather than fitting in the hero power and making his Spellstone be
That much
one
closer
less,
to
be much
being
closer.
upgraded.
And it's going to be interesting to see if that actually comes up in this game, whether this 1/1 ends up being more important, because, he can trade it into something like this Patches to make sure that Spreading Plague will kill it later. And double Spreading Plague coming out.
Beautiful.
This is going to be a very close game from the way these hands are panning out, for the reason that, Spreading Plague and Spreading Plague is good, but it's not enough right now.
Eselore's board is threatening. He hit the Mark of the
my
Lotus. Now
gosh.
he's going to hit Power of the Wild
Another
and
buff.
Direwolf Alpha. I mean, this is This is nasty, and he's rolling right into Bitter Tide Hydra. The second Spreading Plague might not be enough.
Yeah, I'm trying to see.
It's still not a clean clear on any of these, but Eselore is going to be able to clear out 3 of them.
He's clearing out most of them.
Jeez.
Wow,
It's
that's
one of the best Aggro Druid starts I've seen in a long time.
that was a really good start, and that's something that Aggro Druid can just do. Sometimes it can just blow any player out of the water for the reason that it has these explosive starts, and Edwin just has to trade in both of his 1/5 taunts
So
into this
bad.
5/6 just to play another one and hopefully get there.
Eselore doesn't look too happy about that. HotMEOWTH can even play the Spellstone to kill off the patches if he wants. Unfortunately, I don't believe it's upgraded to 4 damage yet, so you can't take down that Direwolf. But you can at least remove 1 minion off the board. No, he's not going to do it.
I feel like he feels as if, the patch has to go into a 1/5 anyways. There's
Yeah,
no real
that's true.
reason for him to use his removal when he can, let's say, use it on the Direwolf next turn. And I don't think it changes how many of these get killed unless Eselore has to hero power this turn, and then it would change the clock on killing an extra one. But, I mean, Eselore's just going to drop his Bitter Tide and say, you know what? You're already out of Spreading Plagues. What do you have? Double swipe?
You really do. I
Would
double
have
swipe
to
would
be
be
double
gross
swipe.
here.
It would have to be double swipe,
Yeah.
but as we can see, HotMEOWTH does not have it.
He doesn't even have a single one. I mean, double swipe might just win the game for HotMEOWTH here, but he doesn't have it. He's
And
not
even
gonna be able to
recognize, or
find
even
it.
recognizing, you know what?
Oh,
That's a
good start. It's going to upgrade the Spellstone.
maybe if he can summon enough Scarabs to go into the Hydra, he can deal 30.
We
maybe
need-
maybe Eselore, Marcus charges the Hydra.
All right, so we need 8 Scarabs to go into this Hydra. That's 24. We need 6 additional damage. That's 2 hero powers.
Well,
Malfurion. Game over.
if Eselore, Marcus charges the Hydra,
right, we can just
and then we get
deal
more
10 damage
Scarabs,
to it
and
in
we can put
increments
10
of 1.
Scarabs into it. I
You're
think we see
genius.
see a line of play here, Cora.
I mean, it's a line of play. That's true. For sure.
Line of play was
It's a
a
line
good
of
way to
play.
put it.
We see a line. Not necessarily the line.
And that Malfurion was actually a pretty good pickup from HotMEOWTH. I'm trying to think, what does he want to see? I mean,
Is he running Lich King?
let me check.
Let's go Arthas.
Let's
Find
go,
Doom
Arth.
Packs. Come on. Death and Decay. Pretty good.
He is running Lich King.
Okay.
I think swipe.
You know,
I
anytime
guess
he
helps
actually
a little
finds
bit.
Deathwing, not bad.
And Eselore finds a way to push 10 damage
Savage
to
Roar.
face Savage
Oh,
Roar.
man.
I mean, the question is, we can see with the hands that swipe off the top would at least be decent, and it would kind of help because, Eselore doesn't have any more refill, but I don't know if it's enough. He needs
He's
to live one more
off.
turn.
He can't. No, he can't even Wild Growth for draw here. This is miserable for HotMEOWTH. And is he actually potentially smiling?
Oh, let me...
What is that? Decode this Edwin face.
Wait.
No.
How much damage is Eselore? I mean, that's just game. I mean,
Yeah,
you can't really do anything.
It's like 15, 18, 19, 20 damage on board.
20
There's-
damage. Edwin was at